This is it. This is my favorite farm strategy of the league. I think it's the best one I've come up with, and barring any big changes from GGG, which could definitely happen, I think it'll probably remain my favorite strategy going into future leagues. Hi, it's Lerald, and I'm going to talk about farming corrupted 8 mod maps in tier 17 maps, but first, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, this is very similar to a strategy that I've used in tier 16 maps as a very low cost, high profit farming strategy throughout the league, and it really has been, I think, my favorite strategy of the league. And I'd gotten several comments saying, you know, you should really try this in tier 17 maps. It seems like it would be good. And I just always thought, you know, tier 17 maps, they could be so profitable when it comes to Scarabs and to currency. Why would I waste that by just farming dumb old maps when you can't get tier 17 maps to drop in tier 17 maps? But in doing it just for the sake of it, just to see, is this any good? Oh my god, yes it is. I am getting over 25 corrupted 8 mod maps per map. And with those being about 10 chaos apiece, that's like 2.5, 2.25 defines per map pretty consistently, pretty easily. And that's just in corrupted 8 mod maps. That's not including all of the extra random junk that you get from tier 17 maps, which is also pretty profitable. Alright, so let's start with the basics of the strategy, and we'll just start with kind of the setup, and I think the best place to start there is probably the Scarabs. So the basic Scarab setup for this strategy, and this is the same Scarab setup that I would run in tier 16s as well, is to start with a Hunted Trader Scarab, and that's because we're not using any league mechanics, we're using a standard back to basics map farming strategy. So Hunted Traders is far and away the most effective Scarab at just adding a bunch of monsters into our maps. It adds tons and tons and tons of dudes. They're a really, really valuable Scarab, and they're super cheap, you know, 1 chaos each, so super, super good. Then obviously, if we're farming corrupted 8 mod maps, we have to have cartography Scarabs of corruption in order to make all of the maps drop as corrupted 8 mods. So that's kind of step 2. Then we have basically 2 options. We can either run 2 of either of the following: cartography Scarabs or cartography Scarabs of duplication, or 1 of each. I prefer to go with 1 of each just because it kind of hedges your bets. By going with cartography Scarabs, you're going to have the like highest average number, or I guess I should say the most consistent number of map drops, but I would say generally speaking probably the least amount, but these are a little bit cheaper. These are like 1 chaos each, whereas the duplication Scarabs are 3 chaos each. I've tried running 2 duplication Scarabs, I've tried running 2 cartography Scarabs, and I've tried running 1 of each, and I feel like I get a little bit better interaction, or a little bit better value out of the interaction of having both of these, so that the floor is kind of raised, but then you have that gamble chance of 30% of the maps being duplicated. I did, before I actually sat down and ran 10 of these and like documented my findings, I did run a couple of maps where I ran 2 duplication Scarabs in this, thinking like, well, it's tier 17 maps, I'm gonna have a lot more. And I actually found that I had less. I found that I was getting like 15, 18 maps per map. Whereas in the actual, in practice of doing the 10 map test and actually logging all of the details, I did get over 25 maps per map by running 1 of each. So I do think this is the strategy here. Hunted Traders, cartography Scarab of corruption, 1 duplication and 1 regular cartography Scarab. But you know, if you wanted to gamba, you could definitely just run 2 duplications, and I think that would be fine. Definitely worth the price. Also, just as always, the map device here, it's a back to basic strategy. You're just running quant. All right, now let's take a look at the Atlas passive tree here. And this is pretty much a standard Atlas passive tree for back to basics. And the only real difference here from, I think, a standard tier 17 map or tier 17 farming strategy is that, you know, we're taking back to basics, which increases all of our map mod effect. We're taking every single map mod effect node that we possibly can. We're taking all of the quant throughout the middle of the tree here. And we're taking the trapping carapaces, notable here, that'll give us more ambush Scarabs, since those tend to be the most valuable Scarabs overall. We're taking a lot of Scarab nodes. But notably, in tier 16 map farming, where you're farming corrupted 8 mod maps, or this strategy that I'm doing here, we're taking all 3 of these map clusters. So these 3 here, shaping the mountains, shaping the skies, shaping the world, and then the teeny tiny little nodes here to give ourselves more maps dropping. 85% chance for all of our maps to be 1 tier higher. That combines with all of our void stones to give us just a much, much higher chance of all of our maps being tier 16s. that works with the empathy system to give us a lot more maps. It's also the reason why, and this is always a comment that comes up in these videos about map farming, cartography Scarab of Ascension, extremely bad. And the reason it's extremely bad is because you're already getting all of the increased map level from those other sources, from the Atlas passive tree, from your Void Stones. And once a map is tier 16, that's it. It can't be more tier 16. And so this is feeding very heavy into the diminishing returns. A lot of times I've seen people leave the comment, this will triple the number of maps you find. Absolutely false. Absolutely false. We're also taking singular focus, and the reason for that is just simply we are farming corrupted 8 mod maps. We're not trying to farm random maps. We are trying to farm a specific map, and I'm kind of jumping ahead in my notes here, but I'm looking for dunes maps. Just corrupted 8 mod dunes or 8 mod toxic sewer as well is also good. Whenever you're farming a singular focus strategy, you want to choose the map that you want and set all of your favorites except for one to that map. And then you want to choose one adjacent map as well. That will increase the number of both sets of maps that you get, actually. So the best possible setup is dunes with 1 toxic sewer. You could go the other direction. Toxic sewer also sells pretty quickly. I've had really good success in selling both dunes and toxic sewer corrupted 8 mod maps, and other maps, not so much. Jungle Valley has not really moved nearly as well this league. Now, returning to the Atlas passive tree, the main difference here, as I said, is that we are leaving all these map nodes in. This is standard in a tier 16 corrupted 8 mod map farming strategy, and this is just a tier 17 corrupted 8 mod map farming strategy. So of course we're going to leave those in. If you wanted to modify this and do kind of more of a normal currency and scarab farming strategy, you just drop all of these nodes for maps. So you drop singular focus, and then these 3 nodes here, these 3 here, these 3 here, and these 3 here for 13 total nodes. And then you would just shove those into the little scarab drop chance passives around the tree. Very basic, very straightforward. Just gives yourself, what is that, 13% more, 3% increased scarab found in map nodes, as at the cost of losing a bunch of maps. But I think, generally speaking, I think this is my farm strategy for the rest of the league, even for tier 17 maps that don't have, as you can see here, this is a perfect example, actually. Tier 17 maps have this little tweak to them where they can have more currency, more maps, or more scarabs dropping in them. As you can see in this one, it says more currency right above where it says quality, 20%. This is another one here, more scarabs, more currency. And then here's one, more maps, 50% more maps, 196% more currency. So because of all of the map mod effect that we get out of the Atlas passive tree from clusters like this, Chiseled Perfection one, or the mounting modifiers cluster here as well, but then also from Back to Basics being anywhere from 0 to 80% more map mod effect, all of that also gets multiplied in the same way. So the pack size, the quantity, the rarity, and the more maps modifiers all get increased. So you might run into a map that has like 120% more pack size, and then also like 140% more maps if you get a good roll on Back to Basics. That is going to make all of the map mods more difficult. That is sort of the danger of doing this in tier 17, so you really want to do this on a juicy build. But the thing is, that's nice about this strategy, I've been doing it throughout the league in tier 16s, and even a juicy tier 16 really isn't that challenging once your build is nice and online, and it's pretty profitable and cheap. This is really just kind of the expansion of that basic strategy into the hardest content in the game, and kind of wanted to see if the profitability expanded to meet that level of increased challenge, and it really has. And then finally, I like to take the necropolis nodes still here. Devout Pursuit is the real money maker of this sort of set of necropolis nodes, but it is nice to get some extra all flames as well, just from this little wheel up here. So that's pretty much the Atlas passive tree. You can see I've got this one little dinky extra scarab node here. I did block out all the league mechanics that I think are bad scarab value wise. I kept in harvest and ultimatum, and then as I said, I took the ambush scarab node, and then that's pretty much it for the tree. So in terms of the maps that I chose to run, I ran Abomination and Ziggurat maps, frankly, just because they're what I had left. I sold all of my citadels, fortresses, and sanctuaries. You can do this in any tier 17 map. However, because tier 17 maps have different boss drops for each map, I do think that Abomination and Ziggurat are probably the two best for making currency if you're willing to kill the boss, and that's probably also something to mention here. Should you even bother killing the boss? I think it depends on which map you're running and how confident you feel in your build, and also the map mods. In doing 10 maps, I had one map in which I wiped on the boss. Died like 4 or 5 times on the boss. It was a pretty nasty set of affixes. I think it was like increased monster damage and then also increased monster damage or life on the boss, and then like more life and increased like life as energy shield. There's a very, very, very nasty set of mods on the boss that really just made it super unkillable. And ultimately, like I did not kill it. I did wipe. But the other 9 maps killed the boss, no real issue, and I got pretty good returns on them. And so I think we should probably take a look at the tier 17 map bosses themselves, or their drop tables, to kind of show off what I'm talking about here. So for Abomination map and Ziggurat map, they have an increased chance of dropping the Uber Maven Keystone. Now the Uber Maven Keystone goes for about 1.4 or 1.5 divines. None of the other Uber boss keystones go for anything close. Like the Uber Cortex is like 10 chaos. I think Uber Exarch is like 50 chaos, which is not bad, half a divine or so. But like if you look at Citadel, it's like Uber Shaper, which is like 3 chaos, Uber Cortex, which is like 10 chaos, and Uber Elder, or whatever, double Uber Elder, which is I think 40, 50 chaos, something like that. So I think you could justify just not bothering to even do the Citadel map boss, the Sanctuary boss, which again is like Uber Cirrus, 3 chaos, and then Uber Exarch and Uber Eater, which I think is like 50 chaos and about a full divine for Uber Eater. So maybe you could justify doing Sanctuary. But then like Fortress, again, we're talking 3 chaos for an Uber Shaper Keystone, 3 chaos for an Uber Cirrus Keystone, and then like 50 chaos for a Turbo Elder Keystone. I think it's justifiable to not spend the minute killing the Citadel boss, not spend a minute killing the Fortress boss, and just skip over them. The only reason I would kill the Fortress boss, I mean, I would kill all the bosses because like I'm a completionist like that. It feels wrong morally to me to do the tier 17 map, clear the whole place out, get all the juice out of it, and then leave the boss alive. Like it just feels wrong. But the Fortress map boss is pretty easy to kill, probably the easiest of all the bosses, at least in my experience. So I would still kill him, even though he's probably the least valuable of all of the tier 17 bosses in terms of their actual drop table. Citadel map boss, I could go either way. You got multiple downtime phases, like a lot of time wasted on this boss, and the rewards from the boss really just are not all that great. You know, Mana Storm I don't think is worth much. So that's pretty justifiable. I did Abomination maps. I was intending to just do 10 Abomination maps, and in the course of rolling all of the Abomination maps I had a lot that like, this looks like a pretty nice map to me. I would definitely like to run this one, but there's no more maps modifier on it. And then I have a couple here like this one. It has a more maps modifier, but this seems incredibly dangerous with the less recovery of life and energy shield. I basically wouldn't be able to leech energy shield. That's like minus 6k ES per second with my build. I think that seems pretty rough, so I didn't want to run that. So I wound up doing 7 Abomination maps and 3 Ziggurat maps. As you can see, I rolled all of these maps as well. All of these I also rolled, and you know, I ultimately wound up running 3 Ziggurat maps. I don't really love the Ziggurat map boss. She takes a while to kill, but she also has a really high drop chance on the Uber Maven Keystone and also the Uber Eater Keystone. So she's definitely the most profitable map boss to kill. Kind of annoying that she takes a while, and I have generally found her to be the most dangerous of map bosses, but I actually found her to be really easy in doing this yesterday. So in terms of the profitability, my initial spreadsheet kind of layout, just the sort of thing I put together, and my expectations were that each map would cost about 100 chaos, 95 chaos. You know, I'm assuming that the maps that I'm running are somewhere in the like 0.7 to 0.8 divines per map, and then I'm spending maybe like 10 to 20 chaos per map rolling them. Some of them you get on the first chaos. Some of them might take 20 or 30 or 40 chaos to roll. In any case, I did keep track of the amount of like chaos I had before starting and after starting, and just to kind of jump ahead a little bit here, I started with like 405 chaos, 408 chaos. And at the end of having rolled all the maps and run 10 maps, I ended with 910 chaos left over here in this little tab here. So I'm like over plus 500 chaos in doing this set of 10 maps, and that's including map rolling. So I do feel like, you know, just straight chaos wise, I felt pretty good about the cost of the map itself being about 0.8 divines. I think that's about right. And then in terms of like the Scarabs, Hunted Traders are 1 chaos, Cartographers, Scarabs are 1 chaos, Corruption Scarabs are actually 2 chaos, a little bit more expensive, Duplication are 3, and then, you know, Map Device Quant is free. So we're spending about 100 chaos per map, 95 chaos per map to do this strategy. And then I was getting, as you can see here, 261 Corrupted 8 mod tier 16 maps, and I have that in these 2 tabs here, this tab and this tab. Mostly dunes, but some toxic sewers. And then I assumed about 1 divine worth of random stuff from tier 17s. I thought that was a significant underestimate, and ultimately I was correct, but I thought, you know, about 1 divine in just random junk, you know, chaos, raw divines, scarabs, map boss fragments, whatever. Per map, I think that's about fair. What that actually wound up being in terms of the 10 maps I ran was 9 reality fragments. If we pull all of those out, a lot of scarabs that I didn't keep track of, including literally the map before I said, all right, I'm going to record this and so on. I did get a divination scarab of curation. I got one like an hour or so before also doing tier 17 maps. So that's like 29 divines that I'm not including in this from these, but 1 divination scarab of completion also on the list of things that I got that I thought were like noteworthy. 505 chaos, and that's net chaos, and that's including the cost of rolling as well, and also a Valdo's puzzle box. So if I were to just math out the value of all of these things, these 9 reality fragments are somewhere between 1.4 divines each, which would put it about 12.5 divines, and 1.5 divines each, which would put it right at 13.5. So if we just split the difference and say 13 divines for the reality fragments, and then that's not even including any of the other fragments. I know I got, I think both of these Uber Shaper, double Uber Shaper ones. I know I got this Uber Eater as well, because I just used all of my Uber Eater fragments a couple of days ago. You know, some other garbage ones like the Uber Cirrus, and definitely I think all of these Uber Cortexes as well. But, you know, not even including those, not including any of the like tons of Orbs of Unmaking or tons of other valuable scarabs in there as well. I also did get quite a few ambush scarabs of containment. We'll say it's like 3. These are about half a divine each, so we could even round down and just say like 1 divine's worth of ambush scarabs, and just generic scarabs. Again, very, very significant underestimate. And then also 500 chaos, and this Valdo's puzzle box, it's about 5.5 divines. So 13 divines worth of Maven fragments. We'll say 5.5 divines for the Valdo's puzzle box, 1 divine for the divination scarab of completion, 4.5 divines worth of raw chaos, and then 1 divine's worth of just random scarabs, including these ambush scarabs. So again, very low estimate, I think. Really, I came out to more like 25 divines worth of stuff in, again, only 10 maps. So a substantial underestimate. My initial very low estimate was that this would be about 25 divines per hour. If we look at the, again, still kind of low estimate on what I actually made, it's probably closer to 40. That feels pretty good. Now, even if we take out a little bit of the good RNG, like even if we took out that Valdo's puzzle box, we kind of edged it down a bit to like 20, we're still pushing 35 divines per hour here. That's pretty great, and that really is the tier 17 difference, because I think you can get fairly close to this level of profitability. Probably not 25 divines per hour, probably more like 18 to 20 divines per hour doing this in tier 16s. Much cheaper, much easier, much safer. But, you know, if you really want to push this up into the like insane profitability level, doing it in tier 17s, doing it in, unfortunately, doing it in Ziggurat and Abomination, and getting those Uber Maven fragments and then selling them off to people who actually enjoy doing Uber Maven, or at least are willing to do it, that really is where the profitability goes to an insane level. All right, so now I just want to kind of give some tips on selling off all of these maps. I think one of the most important things, I am still using TFT as my bulk selling platform for selling corrupted 8 mod maps. I've had pretty good success with that. That is something I kind of had always struggled with in the past, the idea of like, how do I actually sell bulk maps? It's something I'd always like really grappled with, and ultimately I just kind of made the plunge of just committing to the idea of like, I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to post about them. I'm going to post about them every like 20 minutes or so until they sell. And that really has worked for me. I think the biggest tip I can give is that even though Path of Exile is a global game, people play it all over the world, the best hours to sell stuff are kind of daytime hours in America. You want to think about who you're selling corrupted 8 mod maps to. People who are doing like bulk farming strategies. Most of the people who are playing the game are going to be playing like when they're awake. And that usually means daytime hours. And so anywhere from like 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. in the US is kind of a more effective selling time than like 6 in the morning. That has at least been my experience. I really found it to be like night and day. Stuff would sell instantly. If I listed it like, 5 in the afternoon and 5 in the morning, it might sit there until 5 in the afternoon again. Additionally, having a big bulk is also really, really useful for selling bulk maps, obviously. If you're willing to do regex for people, if you're willing to have people send to you in Discord a regex string for maps, something like this, and you're willing to like throw that in there, you can potentially sell these maps for, instead of 10 chaos each, 15 or even 20 if they're like also looking for a certain level of quant, like 120 quant or something. That does require having a larger supply, and so that is why this strategy in particular I think is just so valuable. Being able to have, not like 100 maps that you want to sell, but like 500 maps is going to make people a lot more interested in buying from you than somebody who only has, like 30 or 50 maps. And then, I think finally I was just so impressed by how consistent this strategy was. I was consistently pulling anywhere from 15 to 40 maps per map. And with it being 10 chaos a piece, you don't have to sell them all. You can use them yourself to run as well. I probably am going to do that. I think that's another thing that about this strategy that's like very nice is that it is a little bit self-sustaining. I can farm tier 16 corrupted maps, like actually using the same exact Scarab and Atlas passive setup, and then just use that to farm like a combination of more 8 mod maps to sell to other players, but also more tier 17 maps to run as well. So I can do kind of like a chilled out, low effort, low pain level farm strategy into your 16 maps with this exact same setup, and like, I don't know, watch Dune. And then once I've finished watching Dune and I want to kind of lock in and focus, I can run all the tier 17 maps that I just farmed up using the exact same setup. I like that a lot. It kind of doesn't require a big like mentality switch between the two farm strategies. Really, you just kind of have to adjust to the idea that damage values are going to be much higher in tier 17s. Other than that, I think it's a pretty simple strategy. It's definitely one that is like going to be in my repertoire going forward. It has been my favorite strategy of the league, and I've been really happy to share it with people. I think more people should be doing this because ultimately it's just super fun and super consistent, and everybody wants more maps, right? That is something that no matter how many of them get shoved into the economy, there's always a need to run more of them. And so it's just good to have a lot more of those floating around. I think if I had to point to something about doing this strategy in tier 17s as opposed to like previous strategy of doing it in tier 16s, where again, I thought the profitability was really good. They're very fun and fast and like very zippy. I think the difference here is that the tier 17s just offer so much more extra random valuable crap in them. And that really, really has like shifted the profitability from being like pretty good with like lots of maps and then occasionally like a valuable Scarab or a divine orb here or there to just being like this constant flood of valuable stuff because I'm braving the incredibly dangerous tier 17 maps that really are throwing a ton of currency at me as a reward for going in there and dealing with the pain. All right, that's it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye.